Today at Hopwood Hall, we are going to learn how to make plaster moldings that date back to the 1700s inside the banquet room of Hopwood Hall. The banquet room is in need of major repair. It was built by my ancestors in the late 1600s for an important wedding in the family and renovated in the 1700s as a grand ballroom where many community gatherings were held, including a piano performance by Frédéric Chopin. After the hall was abandoned, it fell into serious ruin due to leaks, temperature fluctuation, and vandalism. We've now embarked on a massive renovation of the hall, with one of the crown jewels being this room. And this requires myself, the community, and students to learn heritage skills, such as making historic plaster designs so that we can recreate damaged or missing ornamentations within the hall so that we can keep up with the renovation, but also that we can restore the hall to its former glory. Walking through the hall, I look around and see so many damaged and destroyed pieces of beautiful, ornate plaster molding. And it's really sad to see this beautiful craftsmanship damaged and almost looking beyond repair. So the idea that we can come in and once again restore this back to its original grandeur is exciting, but I just don't know where to begin. It looks so very impossible at this point. It seems quite daunting. We have to bring in heritage experts who know exactly what they're doing. And in this case, we have Keith coming in, who is a master plasterer. He has worked at Buckingham Palace. He's worked at Windsor Castle. This is somebody who knows their game. The fact that he's coming here to Hopwood Hall to advise us on a plan going forward, but also to help us in the rescue and help us in making these plaster molds and runs is really exciting. So this is the banquet room here at Hopwood Hall. This was originally built in 1689, and we're finally at a point now where we have the roof repaired above it, and so it's dry in here. So obviously we want to retain as much of this detail as we possibly can. I'm just hoping that maybe you can show us how we would do that and how we can bring this room back to its original grandeur.
Yep. Because it's dry and because it's still in place, we can consolidate and save what's there.
That's great.
Especially if you like a challenge.
Yeah, well, you're saying we're actually seeing the layers of work that the craftsmen did in the 1700s.
So this would be the core. This will be the first coat that's run over. And then you put the nice lime putty finish over it. And then you do your final run over the top of it, which gives you the smooth finish.
The reason it's more finished here and the reason it's rougher here is because they did it in layers.
In 2 layers,
They built it in layers.
Yes.
Now, could something like this be saved?
The actual lime render can't be saved, no, because the keys fouled on the back, hence that's why it's dropped.
So the lime render being this
The flat
wall,
area, yes.
The flat area. Okay.
But that's not to say that we can't try to save the mouldings, the plain mouldings. We can maybe try to multi-tool them or chisel them off gently. But also, again, the patra, the mouldings, the block mouldings, they can be saved and they can be reused.
Okay, we are here looking at this damaged ceiling that fell from the long gallery corridor a few years ago. I mean, it looks like a smashed lot of, I don't even know what to say about it. It's just all broken up. So how would we go about putting these pieces back together?
Traditionally, when they used to make the mouldings in situ, they would just run a plain section, a plain, boring moulding. And then with plates of enrichments, and these are usually cast out of lime putty.
So that's an enrichment, is that what you call it?
Yep.
So the enrichment means sort of detail, right?
Yes, any detail. So you have every enrichment's also got a name. So these are cartouche, and then you have the little patra. Everything's got a name in the enrichment world, and they've actually been keyed up when they're produced. So these are produced of plaster of Paris, lime putty, and sometimes hair. They're cast out of a little mould. Sometimes in old school it would have been gelatine or timber. When you run your plain section in, then you'd make little mouldings and you'd bed them all up individually. So these then were originally how they'd done the dressing of mouldings. But the ones you have here, because we can still save some of these pieces, if and when you get to replacing an old ceiling, new version, you can take some of the newer mouldings out, new enrichments out, and bed these old enrichments back to where they were originally. So all the enrichments on this table can be reused, and it's heritage. We are aiming to teach everybody how to run off a section of moulding on the bench. using traditional methods and materials. The traditional materials we're going to use are plaster of Paris, a product that we get from the UK, but it's called the plaster of Paris because fundamentally it was mined more around Paris than anywhere else in Europe. We are going to use a Hessian canvas. The Hessian is the binder that binds the actual product to itself, and when you lift it, it doesn't snap. We need bowls of water, clean water. Can't be hot, can't be dirty, it must be clean water. The profile today we are going to use is a simple panel moulding, and we're just going to cut a shape out of a zinc profile. If it's something we want to match, something we want to copy, we put a simple saw cut for it, piece of paper around it, draw the shape. And what I normally do then is, where you've got the little nicks in there, I'll just make sure I sharpen it with a pencil so you know where the mouldings are. So there's another one in there.
So from this, then you'll be able to cut it into zinc?
Yeah, so we use, I think it's 0.65 of a mil zinc sheeting. We transfer this onto the zinc as it's drawn, and then we cut it out with small tools, jeweler's nips and things like that, very fine cutting tools. Once we've got the profile shape that we then require, we then put it on a timber background, a stock, and every time you run backwards and forwards, you eventually cut the shape that's required. Before obviously you actually start running the profile on the bench, your first step is to make sure the bench is clean, because any slight impurities of plaster that's set in there before will cause problems with your running mould. You have to make sure your water's clean, you have to make sure you've got enough water, all your materials are cut. If you're going to use Hessian or Lave, you have to make sure it's all prepared, purely because you've got a very strict time scale. Potentially you only have a 15-minute window to get the moulding run off. 15 minutes is not long. Once you're actually prepared, ready to go, the first stage really is mix the plaster. So what we do is, with the clean water, the freshly bag open plaster, we sprinkle the plaster into the water. Do not drop it in lumps, because if you have lumps, it's such a fine plaster, it will not break down on the water, and then when you try to use it, it's a lump and it will push all the mouldings off that you're trying to produce. When it's a 50-50 break, you've still got areas of water, but you've got little mounds of plaster. We then mix the plaster. We need a creamy consistency, and it'll be like a natural yogurt-y sort of thickness. Too thin and it will stay cheesy. Too thick, you won't get the profile.
All right, I'm trying to keep up with everything. There are a lot of new words and terms and different meanings between the UK and the US and very different accents. So I'm just trying to keep up, and hopefully I'll do a good job. The one thing I do know is that Keith keeps talking about cheese and yogurt, and it's making me really hungry. It's not even close to lunchtime yet.
You've mixed your material, you've got a nice creamy consistency. Before you take your first bowlful out of the bench to put it onto the moulding, we take a separate bowlful. We then get a Hessian that's been pre-cut. We soak it in the pre-mix, so it's all soaked, there is no dry canvas. We then lay it gently on the bench, and that is what binds it all together. That is our core that keeps the cast together. There are areas of the moulding that are deeper than some areas than in others. So where the deeper areas are, we want to make sure that the canvas, the soaked Hessian, is built up.
I didn't have any confidence going into this, but I'm ready to try.
I'll start holding it, you put it all out as I'm soaking it, and you just put it down the full length of the bench.
The whole thing,
yeah.
Okay. This just seems like a huge piece, you know, to think 4 meters, that will cover one huge section of the banquet room. Now, I know there's a real art to this, but with Keith's guidance, I'm really gonna do my best. I hope I don't make a mistake.
So now we've got the soaked canvas, we've laid it on the bench to the line of where the section's gonna run up and down. Once we are comfortable that the moulding runs over it without snagging it, this is going to tell you if it's right or not. You need to pull this along now and keep checking it. Really, really slowly, because if you snag, you'll pull it all the way along. You can see now at the moment, I can run that over and it's not snagging.
What mistakes could you make at this stage?
If you don't get it pinched in enough, it'll drag when you put it along and you'll pull all the canvas along quickly. So it's worth going over it very slowly a couple of times and just keep tapping it away.
So once I lay out the soaked Hessian, it's almost like a starter pistol has gone off. Keith is like, get to work. You have 15 minutes to finish this. 15 minutes? How am I gonna build this piece of sopping mashed potatoes Hessian burlap into a finished work of art? Now, are we still against a time frame here?
Oh,
we still have 15 minutes?
13 minutes now. Your creamy plaster is now starting to cure, to set, to harden. This is now the perfect opportunity to building up the profile. You sprinkle with your fingertips all the way along, up and down the moulding, especially the areas that you need building up more. The lower areas will build themselves up. The plaster will spread as it goes along. It will feed the low points. So as you keep going, you build the high points up, run it off, clean it off, build it up, run it off, clean it off, build it up.
So I just start going through and layering one by one. Every minute I do another layer. The 1 minute gives just enough time for it to begin to harden, and then you go back over it with the profile. Then you come back, add a little bit more plaster, and go back over it with the profile. Then you come back, add a little bit more mashed potatoes, and you go back over it with the profile.
So you've now got to the point where your profile is basically all there. As the plaster is now getting to its end of its life, 12 minutes into the mix, you'll actually find it will now start pulling. You'll actually see the plaster rolling on the zinc. Without putting any more plaster on it, the exothermic reaction is making the plaster swell that much that with a dry run, no sprinkling of plaster, your profile, as you push it along, you'll see it will start building up, tearing off its own plaster. Then you look down the full length of the moulding, anywhere there's any little air bubbles, any little blemishes, any little chips, you just put the little bit on where you need it, just 1 or 2 more runs, and basically you're there.
Wow, I mean, look, really, it's amazing. Right in front of your eyes, you're seeing it going from being this soggy, messy piece of burlap to a finished work of art. It is so exciting and so fulfilling.
Yeah, well
Beautiful. I'm impressed.
Very well done.
This is what is so cool about learning these heritage skills. It's almost like having a key and unlocking a door that you didn't know was there, and you open it up and all of a sudden you have all these possibilities. Having this knowledge and having these skills makes it seem possible that we as a group can restore this hall. Of course, we're going to have a lot of guidance and advice and people watching over us to make sure we're doing it right and that it looks fantastic when it's done. But you suddenly realize you have so much power, so much potential. It really is incredibly empowering to be able to take this into our own hands and know that the work that we do is going to be up there for centuries. Now I'm going to take a piece of the molding that I have made into the banquet room where we copied it from and see how it looks. An exact match to what they did in the 1700s. Taking a little bit of a risk here, but I just want to hold this up to show you what magic has been done here. It looks beautiful, and it's what not only restoring the building, but also having a clear understanding of what they did with their hands and the people who helped them and the people who helped build this room hundreds of years ago. And here I am, and here we are, and here is the community doing the same thing today. Incredibly inspiring. If you think you might have a passion for learning some of these heritage skills, please consider coming over and joining us at one of our workshops in the future. And don't forget, we also have additional videos about the training on the Historic England YouTube channel, so check out the link down below and head over there and see what we have to offer. Please like, share, subscribe, and click the bell to be alerted about our latest content. And if you'd like to see more videos about our goings-on here at Hopwood Hall, please check us out on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. Hey favorites, thank you for hanging until the very end. If you'd like to read my book called Downton, Shabby from HarperCollins, it is a story about Hopwood Hall. It's available for purchase online. Thank you so much.